Raven, great to be with you. How you doing?
I'm great, Stu. How you doing?
Good. In Bali, correct?
In Bali. Very sweet to be here.
Whereabouts in Bali?
In Ubud, in Pakistan. So we're like
Oh,
surrounded by
beautiful.
rice fields and gorgeous
Hmm,
Balinese rice field workers who come and say hi.
beautiful. What's the vibe like over there right now?
Yeah, it's chill. Lots of more praying going on and singing. And definitely not many restaurants are opened. But yeah, it's nice. It's not like fear and panicky.
Hmm.
Everyone's like even more loving than usual, if anything.
Beautiful. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting times. I'd love to get your perspective on what's going on in the world right now. How are you seeing it? We haven't talked about it yet, really in depth. I'd
Yeah.
love to hear how you're seeing it and feeling it.
Yeah, there's a lot, isn't there? And it's been shifting and moving. I think where I'm at now is it's like anything, like any shadow or anything that is difficult to be with. It's I love it, be grateful for it. What's the lesson here? And I'm looking at that at a global level and for myself personally. And yeah, just a deeper disidentification process is happening. I feel like it's an opportunity to really have a brush with death without death actually being imminent realistically for most of us. But because there's so much fear in the air and this has gone so huge, then yeah, I think everyone is feeling a fear of death at some level. And so it's like, okay, this initiation again from fear into deeper awakening. And so there's a death and birth happening, yeah, globally. And for me personally, everything is slowing down, which I'm really enjoying. And the teacher role is having to dissolve, like public retreats, which means that yeah, I had to kind of go, all right, so who am I beyond that? And I know that's not who I am, but that's really forcing it. And yeah, right when I kind of came to peace with, I'm going to have to just slow down on that, then this teacher emerged through my writings, which is stronger than ever. So I'm doing lots of writing and yeah, connecting in with my next course, which is Awaken the Dream. And it feels like a really good time to be writing about that. And yeah, with clients, I feel like it's really testing people's relationships. People are a lot more volatile at the moment. They're spending more time together. And I think what it's asking, again, me personally and globally, is okay, can we halt? Can we pause? Can we stop? And in that stopping, can communion become more important than communication? Because I feel like there's so much communication going on with technology at the moment, and in general, like this head-to-head communication where let's do this, let's do that, and we're going to work and we're talking here and we're talking there, but it lacks meaning. And what I'm feeling is this is an opportunity for deeper communion where it's more heart to heart, and there's more time spent with loved ones for a lot of people, and a deeper communing not only with others but with ourselves. So I'm really feeling that. And, I'm very big on awakening not being something that happens in a ceremonial or, just in these spaces of high peak moments, which are wonderful. Like yesterday, you can probably see my
I can.
dots. I sat with
Uh-huh.
Cambo, and after I had Sananga, it was like, I felt, yeah, I wanted it in my heart. And at one point in the sit, like, it felt like these just opened and light came out. And I was in that space of just laughing and going, everything is love. Like, that feeling that you have. And I don't think that's maintainable 24/7. And when I was younger, that was my striving. It was like, oh, I want to be this awakened that I would feel in deep spaces of meditation or with certain people, my dad, or later with mystical teachers. Be like, oh, I want to feel that all the time. And it's like, we actually, the irony is that the awakening is in the letting go of having to feel that all the time and being with this human experience, with the coronavirus, with all of the fears of, will I lose my job? What about money? You know, what's going to happen to my life? That whole mystery. And yeah, the deep compassion for people who are suffering at the moment. You know, the duality is even more extreme now. And I think it's in that duality of the human experience that the true awakening happens, when we can accept all of it. So for me, this virus, it's bringing up what's already alive in people, which essentially is a fear of death, fear of the future, wanting to plan the future all the time. It's like, try and fucking plan the future right now. Good luck. So, and that's all there anyway, but now it's just been so exacerbated. So time to look, people, time to look at what's already there and go, okay, so what does it mean to be alive? Because that's what I think facing death really brings us to. It's like, this moment, we can worry about everything that's going to happen because of this virus. You know, we might get sick, a loved one might die, all of that, and it's valid. Those fears are valid. But really, if it comes to that, we'll deal with that then, because we're humans. We adapt, we face challenges. And what's the point of worrying that? Because where attention goes, energy flows. So if we can be here and go, can this show me what matters now? What's most meaningful now? And how can I be alive fully in this space of facing death and have the awakening that's available to people who are dying? You know, often people who are dying, that's when they finally wake up. We all have the opportunity to do that now. So that's a long answer to your question.
No, that was great. I was vibing off that, and just going to kind of echo exactly what you were saying there, and just kind of really chew on and just pick apart that struggle that a lot of people are going through right now of, you know, especially in our kind of Western cultures where one heavily identifies with their job, their money, those two things primarily, like these temporary things where, you know, even upon greeting one another, what do? You know, automatically people tend to say their job. So in places like Perth and a lot of places in the world, people have that thick layer of identity of, who am I? This is who I am. This is what I do. This is what I've got. And possibly all of a sudden, this is one of the first times, or maybe one of the few times, where that's all been stripped away. And yeah, like you said, that fear is really valid. It's really valid. Then it comes down to, like, what are your coping mechanisms, you know? And I really hope it does ruffle people's feathers, so to speak, and really ignite some seeking of some tools, if they don't have any yet, as to how they can really go through this and transform their fear, their complacency, their clinging to avoiding death. I mean, it's another thick layer in our culture, this avoidance and denial of death. Yet, as you were saying, and just want to dive into it even more, when we can really go deep into that contemplation of our impermanence, it really does invigorate an aliveness, like you were saying, and a love for life, and a clarity and less attachment and neuroses in regards to our job, our money. We can really connect with what is real and what is important. I'm seeing a lot of that right now, of both people really struggling with having all this time on their hands and being forced to actually finally be with their kids, like, a lot, or their loved one a lot. What I'm seeing is like equal struggle. Like, what the fuck do I do with all this energy and time now? But then equal to that, like this utopia, people are like, wow, this is paradise. Like, getting to play with my kids all day and getting to make love and getting to hang out and things I've neglected for years. So it's quite an interesting polarity between a lot of, like you touched upon, it seems there's a lot of abuse within households, you know, which I can kind of I can see how that would come about, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like from a male perspective, if I was operating from that model of
Mm-hmm.
identifying with my job, who knows for how long, working, who knows how many hours per day, maybe coming home, and my coping mechanism for that stress is beer or several beers or whatever, and maybe TV as well. And then maybe just a brief moment of maybe tucking the kids in for a moment, or maybe making love to my partner. And it's just those brief, like that's maybe, you know, and all of a sudden, like I can see how a lot of people are getting frustrated. A lot of like, if a man, for example, has all that testosterone that they're used to putting into their work, putting into their sport, putting into their pub, and then all of a sudden that testosterone is just kind of bubbling away, I can see why, you know, men are hitting their kids and abusing their partners and not knowing what to do with that intense energy. And I had Cam on the podcast yesterday. That's why I said, was it Cambo or Brother Cam?
Oh, right. Okay.
Because we were contemplating a similar thing, you know, as men with this testosterone energy and this kind of doing energy, this pitta energy. Like, I really hope through, it can be a struggle, of course, especially if people haven't sat down with that energy, gotten still with it, or expressed and released it, or moved energy with it. All of a sudden, you're faced with it. And I also really hope people can see it for what it is and not just project it onto loved ones that often get it. And yeah, it's an interesting time on that front. There would be a lot of people resorting to over drinking, over abusing with drugs, over masturbating to porn, like just you know, whatever they can do to get that release of the nervous system. So it'd be
well,
cool.
it was interesting. The pubs were closed after yoga studios because they were seen as a necessity. I'm like, the pubs are still open, but they're closing down yoga studios. That's such a metaphor for modern Western culture. And I think what you're talking about with men, it's the masculine. And the masculine is dominant in men and women. Like I'm talking to a lot of women who don't know what to do now. And and it's interesting. It's this space of value that we put on achievement in our culture from a very young age. And I think what this speaks to, and how much people are struggling with the isolation, and some people are loving it, is this space of people not knowing how to be in their joy when they're alone, or when they're communing with loved ones without doing anything. And I mean, for me, the fact that I can be outside in nature, that feels really important. I really feel for the people who can't even go outside or who don't have big backyards. That would be really difficult. And in saying that, it's all just exactly what we need. So I think there's a deep trust and surrender that's needed. And those feminine qualities, we're not taught about those qualities. And it's like that feminine, even receptivity. It's like, okay, can I receive what's before me? Can life be my greatest teacher right now? Because at the moment, life is showing us that change needs to happen. Like we had the bushfires and now this, and the earth is speaking to us in so many different ways, and possibly even, you know, created this virus at some level. And so it took me a long time to surrender into life as my greatest teacher and stop depending on an external source that was embodied like a master or a teacher to inform me or to almost be responsible for my connection to God. And realizing that actually if I surrender to life in each moment, and something that my dad always taught me growing up was every adversity is a seed of greater success. And it used to piss me off sometimes. Like I'd be like, this happened. He's like, every adversity is a seed of greater success, Chantelle. You know, you'll see the seed of success. And I'm like, oh. But, you know, my sister and I, she wrote a post about the other day. We really live that now. And as soon as this happened, there was a part of me that just knows that in 6 months' time, I mean, it's already happened. But back then I was like, you know, we had a retreat coming up in 2 days with 62 participants, had to cancel. Oh my God, like the shit show of emails and logistics and financial loss. It was crazy. And, you know, I could just stay in my center though, because I had this deeper trust of like, there's a reason this is happening, and trusting that. And it's been unfolding. And, you know, when my beloved was deported last year, I had that same thing of like, this is meant to be. And we saw the benefits of it. But I really felt it when this happened, because if he hadn't been deported, he would have been teaching in New Zealand right now in a 6-week training. He'd be stuck there and I'd be in Perth, and we wouldn't be able to get to each other. And that would be extremely devastating. So there's that. There's so many things that I've mentioned. There's the space of, when you mentioned about money, it's like, how important actually is money, and how much money do we need to be happy? And being in Bali and just seeing how happy the Balinese are in the simple life that they live, it's such a beautiful gift for me right now to be witnessing and feeling that every day. It's like, how much do we need? And often the more that we spend, the more that we earn, the more that we're spending. So I'm noticing in this time of like less coming in, I'm spending less, but it's like, did I really need all of that? And yeah, the distraction you're talking about, wow. It's like people are really chasing that dopamine hit you were talking about through their addictions. You know, it's like, even before the addiction starts, I'm going to get home to watch porn, and the neural pathways start firing, you know, towards dopamine, or I'm going to have the beer, or watch a movie, or social media. Like, one of the downsides to this is like social media vortex has just been amplified like no tomorrow, and people are obsessing over all of this corona information. But it's just another entrapment of the ego. It's just another place where people are going unconscious. And again, I think just like all of this is an amazing opportunity to receive the gifts on, you know, like receive them amplified and go deeper into our practice. For the people who are on that trajectory, equally for the people who are more unconscious and really deep in addiction, this is taking them deeper in. And the choice of power here for listeners is to really look at your addictions, look at the way you avoid, and ask yourself, how can I get that same dopamine hit? How can I set off my neurotransmitters, oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, without avoiding and without going to addictions? How can I find purpose here? Not from ambition, but from a deep space of what actually creates meaning in my life. So, you know, there's lots of practices in Tantra that can really help with that. And yeah, we can go into those if you like. And I think it's really important right now.
Yeah, do one. Go into one powerful way where maybe whoever's vibing with it can do it regularly throughout the day, when they're hitting that blockage, they're hitting that doubt, they're becoming compulsive and just reaching for food, reaching for something to distract. Yeah, please.
So just closing the eyes down and breathing really deeply and deeply into the belly, and bringing some touch to the belly, to the heart, and then just like rubbing the belly with deep breaths and just saying like a mantra, I'm safe. You know, safety is really being rocked right now. But external safety, you know, security, it's an illusion. The safety you need is here by simply allowing what's alive in you. So just breathe into the belly, allow whatever's alive. I'm safe. And just whatever sensations, experiences are here, just be with them. And you bring some loving touch to the heart space. You know, if you're a woman, touch your breasts. It's the best way to activate oxytocin. And for men, yeah, just connecting with your heart, just circling your hand around your heart space. I am love. So, you know, I am safe. I am love. And just like 10 really deep breaths into that. Maybe you want to let out some sound on the exhalation, just like freeing anything that's not love, that's forgotten that safety is here in our bodies in each moment that we decide to ask the right question, which is, how can I open to what's here in this moment? That's what creates safety, is our willingness to be open to the fear, to the grief, to the bliss, to the joy, to the frustration, to the love, whatever's here. Can we just open to that? Yeah, that's one practice.
Yeah, and I mean, imagine doing that for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour. I mean, we've got so much more time on our hands, a lot of us right now. Keep going with that. You know, if you were vibing off that, listeners, like press pause and just keep going, keep breathing deep, keep feeling it all. Because what goes hand in hand with those masculine or more unconscious masculine traits in terms of the quote unquote spiritual path is to stay positive, stay strong, which is helpful. A bit of willpower is helpful, but it felt like what you're inviting is more of a feminine embrace of feel it all. If you're scared about your financial situations and you're unable to pay the bills, that's a relative truth that we want to feel into, and we want to embrace it. We want to breathe through it. And if we can, that kind of metaphor of turning poison into nectar can occur again and again, that fear of lack, that they're all valid fears. Yet if we can do exactly what you ran us through then, again and again and again, a lot of creativity can be brewed up, and a lot of ideas. It's kind of like the stress is like another metaphor, is like the manure, and we're churning it up and getting this fertile terrain happening where we can put all the fear, all the doubt, all the anxiety, and keep churning it up into this kind of this nectar of growth, this blossoming of creativity. And I mean, I was just talking to Cam as well about how many people bitch about their job and moan about it and just can't wait for the weekend to loosen their identification from their job. And then maybe all of a sudden that's manifested and your job's been stripped away from you. And yes, it's tough, but go deep, my friends, and then really just expand through it. But like you were just doing, the breath and sound, two incredibly powerful tools to expand through all of this. Because just through willpower alone, it's like having this whole artillery of tools and just using like one very blunt tool that's somewhat effective. But the breath, we really need to utilize that right now and get that transmutation, that shift into pure possibility. So thank you for running us through that.
Yeah, that's okay. And the breath, like breathing the body open to what is definitely, I feel like, the best way to transmute energy. And movement, like for people who do have a lot of fear, just shake. I've got a Spotify playlist, Ignite Your Power Daily Practice, and there's a great track on there. It's got like a bit of didge and different percussion instruments, and you shake to it for 10 minutes and feel amazing afterwards. And then there's a track after that which invites breath of fire. You know, breath of fire is really good for transmutation too. Like 60 seconds of breath of fire is equivalent to at least like 10 minutes, even more meditation. You just kind of burn through a lot quickly. And then there's another track that just kind of takes you into stillness and silence where, you know, I think what's happening right now is the mind is going crazy. It's always going crazy though. Again, it's just amplifying the dysfunction that's already in humanity. But with all of this information flooding in, the mind's like, what if, with all of its scenarios. And, you know, the mind is always split. It's like there's right and wrong. It's usually in the future or the past. It's not really in the moment. So that the last track is really about observing the mind without believing it, you know, not running. It's like kind of seeing it like a noisy, annoying neighbor. You know, it's not who you are. It's just this voice going, nah, 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 you know, a neighbor that won't shut up. So it's like, would you invite that neighbor into your home? You know, that's often what we invite into our bodies. But something else that's possible to invite into the body is the breath. And, you know, people try to let go of the mind. You can't let go of the mind. The mind lets go of you when you find something deeper than it, you know, deeper than the ego. And what's deeper than the mind, deeper than the ego, is this beautiful body. And it's a paradox because we're not this body, we're not this mind. But, you know, Tantra really looks at going into duality to go beyond duality. So you go into you welcome that, you go into the dual nature of the human experience, into the darkness and the light, breathe into the body, breathe it open into feeling what's there. And, you know, that practice that we took you through then, it's like, each time you do it, you'll grow in your capacity to be with sensation and experience. And that's really the problem. That's the disease of our culture, that people don't have a capacity to be with sensation and experience, so they externalize it. You know, they try to find safety outside of themselves. They turn someone into an enemy. They project over here. They want a savior. And I'm really like, a lot of people are wanting sessions at the moment. And I'm also saying to them, also pause, because life's your teacher at the moment. Your breath is your teacher. And I don't mind giving you sessions, but just notice where you're wanting more sessions than usual. Like, it's like, can I have 2 sessions a week with you at the moment? It's like, yeah, or, you know, one of the sessions with me could just be a session with you where you actually just feel the energy of what you feel when we're having a session, which is embodied, which is just like, I'm just like really giving permission for people to be here in their body now without the destructive and distracting mind that wants to be somewhere else and goes into addiction or into trying to find a savior or an enemy because they've got all this energy that's undischarged. So like the first week when this happened, I was waking up and just like, just fucking shaking for at least an hour, sounding, moving, and then several times a day. And it wasn't, I'm not a big one of, it wasn't just mine, but this really wasn't just mine. It was just, you know, it was huge. And I'm like, wow, this is great. How much is this activating inside me? Because, yeah, it wasn't all mine, but it was still resonating with stuff unconscious within me. So it's like we have all this undischarged energy in the body from times we haven't felt safe, from times maybe when we were younger and we didn't have money, or we were lost and didn't have a job, or we were abused sexually or physically. All of that's coming up now, right? Because you're having to feel, you're having to spend time with yourself. So the encouragement is that undischarged energy in your body, that's blocking your power. It's blocking your Sushumna Nadi. It's blocking energy flowing from the earth up to heaven and really freeing you to be fully here. So breathe into it. Yeah, give it sound and movement, shake, do whatever you want. And in that process, you'll begin freeing yourself from the samskaras of the past. You'll begin freeing yourself from actually a story that isn't who you are. So it's back to that. Who are we really? Our essential nature is love. Our essential nature is freedom. And we have all of this baggage that identifies us with something else. And that's the kind of masculine side of it, or the transcendent side of it. And then the more embodied side of it, or the part that acknowledges the deeper humanity of it, we also have in our nervous system trapped energy from our past where we didn't know how to feel things fully. Like if you're abused as a child, you can't, and you're scared, you don't scream, you go into freeze. Or there's moments maybe when you were bullied, or you were afraid of, and you didn't feel safe, and you just swallowed it down, either because most of us are conditioned to keep that down. Oh, no, it's okay, everything's okay. Or here, have some food, which is where eating addictions come in. Or our parents and the people around us are our role models of imitation. So how do they deal with their emotional body? Usually through addiction and avoidance. So what fucking hope do we have? So yoga and tantra are a re-education that's most needed on the planet, which my greatest hope is for that to enter the education at some point, where children are taught what to do with their emotional body. So they know, hey, if you're feeling sad, cry. If you're feeling angry, growl. And as babies, they know how to do that. They're sensory organs. They have the greatest capacity in the world to be with sensation and experience without any shame, without the mind judging it as right or wrong. And that's why they're the most beautiful, closest thing to God that we can ever touch, because they're just fucking fully alive, fully present, and not trying to control their experience. All these self-protective mechanisms that we form around ourselves. So the practice of yoga, the practice of tantra, it takes you deeper into, okay, yes, who am I? Not in a way where you're denying the emotional body, but where actually it's inviting you into a deeper breath into that and giving you an opportunity. I think yoga really gives the presence, the stillness, the capacity to transcend it being so personal. It creates a container and a witness, an observer, where once that container is there, then Shakti, like Shiva's there holding the space, and then Shakti, she can actually flow. The feminine can flow and feel. And in that space, that inner union, which Tantra and yoga means union. So Tantra and yoga both really, and we're talking real yoga here, not just, asana on the mat in fancy yoga clothes, people who actually go into the deep practice of it. And it's that space of, fuck, I don't want to sit right now. I really don't want to sit right now. I want to have that beer. I want to just go and, sex can be used as avoidance. I want to text message this person. I want to read information about Corona. I want to just go onto social media. I want to emotionally eat. Yeah, it's there. And then you've got to just fucking choose it. I choose the practice right now. Like now on the planet more than ever, you've got to choose the practice. And then when you choose to sit, it's like, what is here? What's alive in me? Can I feel it? And knowing that you're not just transmuting what's alive in you now, you're discharging energy that's your whole history. So to disidentify from your history, to meet yourself without the story of your past, it's not just about observing, it's not just about feeling, it's both. It's being able to observe that voice without believing it, so that you can drop in enough that you can feel the energy without going into victim. And it can discharge out of your body, and then it's like, okay, I remember who I am now. And eventually that practice, when you're disciplined enough to sit every day, that practice keeps expanding until you don't need to sit on the mat for it to happen. You can be doing the dishes, you can be with a beloved, you can be going shopping and everyone's in a panic. And your focus is on your heart and not on your mind, because you've sat enough times to know that that's who you are. Who you are is love, and it's here in this heart space. It's not anything else. And you can trust that no matter what happens out of this, even if you do have less money, maybe you'll end up with more money, even though you think you'll end up with less money. If you lose your job, wow, what an opportunity to go from what you once knew to something that maybe is meant to be. So do an experiment, a surrender experiment. What would my life look like right now if everything that happened, I just surrendered. I kept choosing surrender and I kept trusting, because every teacher I've ever met, and I've met a lot of amazing, incredible teachers in my life, I noticed the same thing. It's like it starts from the inside, not from the outside. It's the internal game that matters the most. And the people who transmit the most presence on the planet, and I include you in this, Stu, just being around you, I feel it. They're not teachers, they're masters. And the difference between a teacher and a master is that a master is not trying to teach you anything. He's just being fully present, and you feel that energy and it awakens love in your being. And that's only possible from someone who can really hold the practice as a way of life. Life becomes a meditation. It's embodied meditation. It doesn't deny materialism. It doesn't deny desire. And it also doesn't deny spirituality. It's just like, here we fucking are, and you've said that to me before when I've been stuck. You're like, here we are. And I'm like, I don't want to be here. But my soul remembers that, and there's always that deep remembering when I'm with you that this is it. Here we are, and we can't control it. It's totally futile to try. So yeah, I hope some of that's helpful.
Yeah, powerful stuff, Raven. Thank you. It's super refreshing and inspiring hearing more of these, we could say more feminine approaches. For so long, the meditation game, the yoga game, the mindfulness game was all the common task at hand was like, get as still as you can, get as no mind as you can, which is all well and good. It's a beautiful experience when the mind gets completely quiet and there's nothing. That is a piece of a spiritual experience, a mystical experience. But these more feminine approaches of really learning to be with the full spectrum of the human experience is so valuable. And I keep hearing it again and again in teachings and in conversations. And it's needed. And I think this would be a good segue to go into this piece of sexuality, where the unraveling and in particular women finding their voice to express moments of sexual abuse and imbalance within the community. And it's just an interesting unraveling there of so many quote-unquote masters and gurus and sages getting exposed for their exploiting of consent and of sexual transmission, sexual intercourse, and just, yes, in a way, what was acceptable not too long ago has become unacceptable all of a sudden, which is good. Mm-hmm. But I think it's also confusing for many people, in particular, just speaking to men, because they're the ones that in particular have been exposed for this. I'm speaking in a way that's like kind of, again, seeing why so many people resort to over drinking, resort to over using porn, over like these coping mechanisms. Mm-hmm. So like kind of, yeah, these people need to get taught a lesson in healthy boundaries and all of that. I'll let you speak a bit more to it, but also seeing how we've gotten into that imbalance of these old models of spirituality really not being sufficient in people dealing with their sexuality. Kind of like the priests. That's a classic example of like swearing celibacy, swearing this oath to God, and then just having no tools to deal with their sexuality. And it builds up and builds up, and they end up doing horrific things that they wouldn't even admit to another priest. Who knows? I don't know. But it's a big can of worms, but it's been opened, which is good. And a lot of people are getting the catharsis and the healing and are finding their voice. At the same time, the dysfunction is there. And do you think do you think there is healing taking place in both the people finding their voice and finally having the courage to speak about it, and that realm has opened up, but also the people that are feeling the compulsion to sexually abuse another? Like, what do you observe is going there, and where it's evolving or devolving? What are your views?
Well, I think it's healthy for women to be finding their voice. And what I think is even healthier is if that was happening with compassion. So I kind of feel like the men who are perpetrating, for want of a better word, I mean, it is perpetrating to a certain extent, they're not only copying what's happened between them and that woman, but they're copying what men have been doing for a long time. They're copying a lot of projection. And a lot of that projection is coming from that space of, wow, all these spiritual teachers are doing this. So it's like all of that. But probably more at an unconscious level, just how much abuse and rape and pillage there's been from the masculine. And I feel like, I mean, if you look at it, the level of unconscious sexual energy that runs from a lot of spiritual masters is definitely equal to a lot of the unconscious, like, emotional energy that happens from women, but on the planet at large. And I think it's all relative. It's like, okay, because it's sexual, it seems so much worse. And, you know, I had sexual abuse for 2 years, from the age of 7 till 9. And I've had to do a lot of healing around that. And the healing really happened when I found a deep space of compassion for my uncle. And that compassion, what I realized was he didn't know what to do with his sexual energy. And priests and spiritual masters, I just see that you know, like priests go for young children, because even more than spiritual masters, their sexual energy is completely infantile. You know, they've been denied sometimes from the time they were a child. They've been raised to be priests. So it's, and this is going to probably be controversial, but there is a part of it, there is an innocence to it. There's also not, but there's an innocence to it where they're exploring. And I'm sure the guilt and shame is their greatest punishment that they feel afterwards. And I have given sessions to men who have gone into spaces of crossing boundaries, who are riddled with guilt, fear that they're going to do it again, extreme guilt and shame. And I have a real soft spot for them, because when I ask them, what were you taught about sex? What was your upbringing? It's like, either like religion, it's evil, don't do it. So it's like they suppress it. And anything we suppress, when it finally gets expressed, it's in moments when we're when we're drunk or out of control, or we just can't hold it in anymore. It's kind of like the whole world, anything that they've been told isn't okay, our emotions, our sexuality, whatever it is. It's like, you know, when kids try and hold an inflatable ball in a pool and it pops up and hits them in the face. That's what it's like. You're trying to put it underwater, but we're made up of water. Our emotions are going to flow whether we like it or not. And that water is going to go and push up, right? And then it's going to get expressed unhealthily. So I would say, like, the world needs more compassion for a start. No one just acts in a way because of no reason. It's like it's a result of their conditioning. And yes, of course, there's the side of me also like, fuck you, you should know better. Like, educate yourself. You're a fucking spiritual teacher. Like, do your homework, read about sexual energy, find someone who's masterful in that area. Sure, there's that as well. And I think that, you know, are they learning? Are the perpetrators, or these people who are going unconscious, are they learning? Yeah, I won't say his name, but there was one particular Tantra teacher who was getting a lot of flack, and things were blown up out of proportion, sensationalized. But he said, yeah, this is true, this is true, this is true. And it happened like years and years ago, and it was catching up with him now. And he's like, I just didn't know about the nervous system. I didn't understand that when a woman, like, at the beginning of the session, her boundaries were that she didn't have any, right? I mean, no, she did have some, sorry. And it's like, okay, no penetration, no digital penetration, no cock penetration. And then halfway through the session, she would open and say, now I don't have any boundaries. And that's a lot of the time when Tantra teachers I'll speak of more specifically get in trouble. It's like, actually, not a lot of people know that a woman's communication center switches off in high states of arousal. So if she's in a Tantra session, and not all I do Tantra sessions and maybe 10% sexual energy is included. So I want to dispel that myth straight away. Tantra isn't about sexuality. It just includes sexuality, and no other spiritual tradition does. So that's why that becomes the focus and it becomes marketable. So, people who maybe don't know much about the deep tradition end up just talking about sex to market themselves. So we have this overextension of sexual energy. But that's another point. So, okay. Coming back to that space, he didn't know that a woman's language centers turn off. So, these Tantra sessions that involve massage, that involve yoni de-armoring, or that even just involve some connection, once she's opening and feeling the presence of a man who can actually hold her, who can keep eye contact, who's breathing, she starts to get turned on. And then she's like, now I'm open. But then when her language center comes back and she's fully there, she's like, oh my God, I said I didn't want that, and he did that, and that's abuse. Yeah. This is one example that I'm using. And he said to me, I didn't understand that. I should have learned more about the nervous system. So anyone who's practicing any kind of body work on women or men, any kind of sexual engagement with clients, understand the nervous system, right? Do your research and understand how fight, flight, and freeze works, for fuck's sake, just as a basic foundational premise. And then there were other situations where he admitted he took advantage, and he was young. He was suddenly wanted by women. Before he was a Tantra teacher, he was invisible. Now all of a sudden. So yeah, but I could feel him in that. And yes, you're an idiot. Like, but I also see how that could be easy. And I feel like that men get so much flack for this. It's kind of like I watched this documentary and there was a man physically abusing a woman and everyone in the street went crazy and they were like punching into him. And then there's another scene where a woman is emotionally abusing a man and just going like, fuck you, you did this. And people are walking past laughing. So equal to the unconscious sexual energy that goes on in a lot of male bodies is the unconscious emotional energy that goes on in a lot of female bodies, and the unhealthy seductress. So I think that unhealthy emotional energy and unhealthy seductress energy is part of this and not often spoken into. It's like, which part of that woman is now not dealing with her emotional body responsibly so that when she has a voice, it can be coming from a clear space. And then for the men, it's like, yeah, what they need to be doing is going into their unconscious and running their desires and their fears. Something that I do with a lot of yogi, more polarized on the yogi side, is like, they've had periods of celibacy. They're wanting to come more into sexual energy, but they're worried that their animal is going to just like be out of control and they're going to want to fuck everything that moves, or they're going to get themselves in trouble basically in some way. And so I'm like, okay, run that desire, run it through your body. And then I just give them permission and I witness them in it to just like, I put them on a mattress and go, imagine that you're fucking like 100 women and you don't even care about them, and you're doing more harm than good. Because the other thing is like, what happens when I'm with a woman, for someone who's very present, is she falls in love. And then, I feel responsible for her. I'm like, okay, so you're not responsible, just run that desire. And then I get them to run the fear of that. because actually on the other side of desire is always fear. So I think if these teachers were taught to run their desires, it's like, okay, we have desire. Can this be okay? And then what's your fear of that? So that they can find an integrated place of sexuality where they give themselves permission to feel desire, to be alive in their sexual energy, but also practice discernment with that, because they don't have all of this unconscious energy that ends up taking them over.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's really refreshing and a really nice take on it. Again, it does I can see the unfoldment, the kind of process, and possibly even the catharsis of all this anger towards men. It seems like a kind of required stepping stone to a more compassionate place, like what you're talking about. It seems like a massive express and release. All of this suppressed, submissive, oppressed energy from the feminine it's finally got an opportunity to be expressed. And sure, a lot of it is a bit maybe too inflamed and lacking a bit of intelligence and discernment. But I mean, that's part of the feminine, isn't it? It kind of when it's running wild like that. It's.
I mean, the thing is, it's not about jumping straight to compassion, and it's also not about being in the that's part of the feminine. It's also part of the wounded feminine that can't process pain without communicating it. So yes, communicate. But when I was processing, I mean, not just the sexual abuse, but later in life, I've had initiations from tantric masters, and then later actually gone, hang on a minute, was that actually what I needed? And my inner child was actually needing father energy. And then I had a lot of anger and rage coming up. So I took it to the mat, I took it to the pillow. I'm like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. You just, and just
so
really let it rip.
Isn't it?
That's the difference.
Yeah.
So then by the time I spoke to the teacher I'm talking to about it, that I felt this rage with, I was able to say, hey, I feel really, really sad, actually. I need to understand a little more about how you thought that would benefit me, given that the situation at the time was X, Y, and Z, and that would provide me with more safety. And it's like direct communication with him. I know that's not possible for everyone, but this part of the feminine that's broadcasting it, that's publicly humiliating. Yes, there's a great part of that that's encouraging other women to speak up. But what I would love to see is that if that broadcasting was coming from a space of love and service, not a place of let's all go into collusion as women and take men down for everything they've done to us throughout history. And I'm not saying it's all that, but there is some of that. So, with everything that is controversial, it often comes with, there's a lot of light because you're breaking through. It's like this coronavirus. There's a death and a birth that's possible here, like in any great times. And as the world is changing, we need to change. Something's dying in the world. So listeners, don't let the world change and you don't change. Change with it. Die and be reborn with what's happening globally, because otherwise you're going to be left behind. So, and it's the same with any crisis, any controversy. Yes, there is something being broken through and the voice is great and whatever is happening, there's a movement, right? But with that movement needs to come a deeper movement within, where we're entering what I call holy darkness, where, we can express and release a lot of and discharge a lot of the fire that's there, not just from what's happened, but from what it's reminded us of in our childhood, in our past, from men, in our ancestors, what our mothers and grandmothers were holding. And do your work. I remember one time I just got into a forest because that was the only thing that I felt could hold how much rage was in my being. When I found something out around, this similar situation of abuse, and it was to someone that I really loved, and she later committed suicide. And I knew she couldn't handle what had happened. And I was fucking raging in the forest, like you would not believe. But then afterwards, there was a level of equanimity that could drop into me, because I discharged a lot of the tension. And that equanimity doesn't have to just be from consciousness. I feel like, the equanimity, or the non-jewel in the body, sits in the Sushumna Nadi. It's like Ida and Pingala are the masculine and feminine. And that's where most people are, either in the feminine or in the masculine. But when someone has a transmission of both, and they've got that union, and against you, this is part of why I love you so much and always take your advice and respect you and come so alive whenever I'm in your presence, is because I feel that union in your body where, masculine and feminine have met in the Sushumna Nadi, and actually the feminine's not dominating, nor is the masculine. There's there's a loving awareness, as Ramta says. So, and I really, really honor that in you and in any master that I meet. And I say master because I want to make that distinction again between a master and a teacher. And really, for the people who are listening, if you really want to go deep, like, start to sit with a master, have sessions with Stu, or someone that who you feel that energy with. When you're with them, they don't even need to speak, and there's a remembering that happens within your own being of God, of love, and it's like everything relaxes, and the mystery starts to do her magic.
Yeah. Well, thank you, by the way, for one.
You're welcome.
Did you ever end up watching Carmageddon on Bhagwan Dust?
No.
You still got it, because it's been quite a beautiful unfoldment of him, because he is a classic example of a very masterful Bhagwan, a very just powerful being, and he was the man that introduced Ram Dass to Maharaji back in the day, and he is known for a very powerful transmission, yet he has a whole host of abuse records. So he worships the feminine, worships Kali, worships the yoni, but took it too far for a while there, and again it got really dark and really seedy. And
Carmageddon.
Carmageddon. It's really beautiful. I mean, the documentary follows him when he was
write it down.
When he took things too far and was just sleeping with too many people and just exploiting his power, essentially. And but since all of those claims came forth and part of the Me Too movement, and he kind of got thrown under the bus, and again, deservedly, he needed to be told, you fucked up. Yet then following that, he's been really vulnerable and really expressive and apologizing and going through his process. So I agree with you in that men are learning, people are learning. And as people like him, who maybe we could say have done wrong, are owning it. And through just really owning it and getting transparent with it and honest with their process, it seems gradually over the years, women have been able to hear him out again. Not at first. At first it was just anger, no, you've done wrong, should pay for it, which has truth to it. Maybe that's part of it.
Yeah,
and
for
then
sure.
After that, after a few years, gradually he's come out again, and just, it's been really beautiful to witness. And seeing him evolve from that feels like a big, big piece in people becoming more whole. Because for him, he's this master teacher, I forget how old he is, but he'd be in his 70s now or something like that. And without a doubt, he would be more in the transcendent, more in the kind of Shiva energy. And it's powerful. It's powerful, that kind of non-dual transmission. Yet, as we keep seeing, the sexual energy would go unaddressed, especially when the kind of spiritual narrative of worshipping the yoni, worshipping the feminine, which is doing, but without the clarity, I guess, that you're expressing, without really running it through his own experience with discernment, which is tricky to navigate. It's so complex and so many.
Well, they need tantra. Like, it's like yogis need tantrikas and tantrikas need yogis. It's like there's this separation that gets created between yoga and tantra that's actually fucking crazy, because any good yoga teacher includes tantra. Any good tantra teacher includes yoga, because they're the same. They lead to the same place, and they're both so necessary. And I think that, and this goes for everyone at home too. It's like, learn from people who know. Like, instead of, maybe spend 10 minutes on being informed by good sources about coronavirus. Like, stay informed, but maybe just 10 minutes as opposed to 3 hours. And then the time you've got, listen to things that are going to nourish your mind. You know, listen to podcasts about yoga, if you're polarized in tantra, listen to podcasts about yoga, vice versa. Start to seek the wisdom of the ages, of people who have committed to being held by a tradition that is different to your tradition. And it doesn't mean you don't, I'm like the tantra tradition, that is my tradition. But I will gladly and openly listen to masters from other traditions and teachers from other traditions, because unless you're the humble student, you become self-righteous, you know, and there's so much fucking self-righteous spirituality going on where it's like, this is the way, this is not like in the world in general. If we can loosen our grip on right and wrong and just accept people, it's like, how are you dealing with this? How are you? Okay, wow, that's a different way. And across the board, what we're wanting on the planet and for ourselves is healthier expressions of our sexuality, of our emotional body, of our physical bodies. I mean, right now, what an opportunity to be filling your body with just good food. You know, I see people like on their phones finding out about coronavirus with a cigarette and a beer. I'm like, are you for real? Are you like, it actually startles me. There's all this fear about this virus, and what are you putting into your body right now? You know, I had Cambo yesterday for a good immune boost and vitamin C infusions and like smoothies every morning, eating raw. And my promise to myself is I'm going to be just this healthy after this virus, because it's like I'm fucking pinging. I'm feeling great. And asana, I'm doing my salutes every day, going for walks, probably not doing as much exercise as I could be, but moving the body a lot every day. So that's really another very simple practice, is eat well and notice what you're doing with your energy. Because again, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, it's like, bring loving touch for oxytocin. Set yourself a goal for dopamine. Like, okay, I'm going to run for 20 minutes. I'm going to do asanas for whatever it is, so that you feel good afterwards. You know, it's like, yeah, I did that. And, you know, you get a bit of a dopamine hit with the more charged exercising. And then serotonin, that's all about our beliefs about ourselves. So start practicing a bit of radical discontinuity. While there's such radical discontinuity in the planet, it's like, what are you going to do that's different today? Maybe it's like... You
know what I'm doing that's different?
What?
I'm cleaning the house and I'm loving it.
I bet your Jo's loving that.
She's loving it. I was brought up as a kid, you know, we just, in a very laid back household, and it was beautiful, but it trained me to not really see when things are untidy. So it gets to Jo, and she's been very patiently teaching me to be more mindful in the cleanliness thing, and it's finally happening. And I'm just, I've been enjoying cleaning, actually. Like, it's been therapeutic. It's been like exercise. And
do you put some funky tunes on?
Sometimes. Yeah. Well, that's the balance for me as well. Like, there's a time for all kinds of different music. There's a time for silence, you know. So sometimes, And
I keep seeing your stories with the girls and dress ups and I love looking at it. It's like if I want to smile, I just go to your stories or your Instagram. Like you're really living life and having fun. It's like
we're having fun. I mean, we're in full quarantine here. We haven't left the house in a week. We got to keep it's literally a $50,000 fine if we get caught leaving our gate.
Crazy.
And, it is kind of, and you can kind of feel the police presence and like helicopters and shit. I don't know how. There's probably always helicopters, but it seems like they're keeping an eye on us.
And how's Lani going? Because she's only like 1.5.
She'll be 2 in May, so she's great. I mean, just like recently, Soleil and Lani have just hit this new level of just being friends and playing and like having conversations, and so yeah, it's beautiful. It's been a really beautiful week so far, and it feels like a retreat. You know? I have said this on a couple of other episodes, but a great teacher, Jack Cornfield, was giving advice to people via a podcast with Tim Ferriss. And he was saying, people pay shitloads to go on retreats. People pay shitloads. Like right now, you're getting forced to go into retreat. This is a
free retreats.
Yeah. And
you have to like turn your life into a retreat. What happens at a retreat? You know, you're getting filled with good information, moving your body, you're with like-minded people. I mean, that's not as possible for some. This is why community is something that I'm really wanting. I've always wanted, but now I'm like peeking out on it. We're looking at places, because imagine if we were all living in self-sustainable communities around the world. It's like we could all be together. We were together anyway, and growing our own veggies. There wouldn't be this panic about food, solar power.
I do see more of that getting revitalized. You know, for so long we have been so obsessed about our own living headquarters, our own car, our own stuff, and we put
our own toilet paper.
And it hasn't worked. It's very dysfunctional. And I mean, Joe and I have been talking about that as well, like that, how healthy it feels to go get some land a bit off the grid and become more self-sufficient and more adaptable, because we aren't. I mean, we're so urban conditioned. Joe less than me, because she was brought up way in the desert. But me, I'm an urban kid, and I don't know shit about my survival.
Yeah, Tara and Antosh were preparing for like apocalypse years ago. They're like, they're telling us, they're right into it. It's great having them around. There's this guy, his name's Shiva, who lives in Bali, and he's like, okay, if shit really hits the fan, boom, 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 gets a meeting point. I'm like, wow, you guys are really good at this.
We need people like that, you know?
Yeah,
we totally need people like that. Yeah, so I'm inspired to make a few changes in that front. And again, we're all in it together. We're all helping each other out. And it's this weird paradox right now where we're all isolated. Yet it feels like when we get on the other side of this, there'll be such a deeper appreciation for community, for being able to finally get in touch and have a hug and collaborate. Like, I know I took it for granted, for sure. I enjoyed it, but this is just going to take it to another level of how lucky we are, you know, if we do, like, some people aren't in enough of a privileged position to even think about shit like this. They're just in full survival mode. Like you mentioned about people who went through the bushfires. I mean, it would feel like hell on earth right now.
Oh, yeah.
They lost everything in the bushfires. And then this, I mean, it would feel really, really scary. And I know a lot of places in the world would feel like that right now, you know, and I want to just remember that and have compassion for that. And
definitely.
It feels right now a kind of balance between like bringing attention to that and also celebrating these new possibilities and what this could be calling us to rise up to. You know, it feels like a balance between the two.
Yeah, and also celebrating how supportive, like, the different institutions and governments, like things I've heard from people, you know, of what their employers are doing, giving them 6 weeks off paid,
Totally.
breaks off mortgage that don't have to be paid later. It's just like, okay, 3 months off your mortgage. There's a lot of kindness going on too.
Yeah.
And compensation, and, you know, Centrelink are boosting up their payments for people. And yeah, definitely keeping that balance, and also the very basic shamanic principle of where attention goes, energy flows. And it's a great practice, you know, to place our attention on what we are grateful for, and on what people are doing to support each other right now. And of course, feeling the people who are really suffering. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to keep you for much longer. Is there anything else you want to share?
Oh, once we get talking, we could talk all day, right? We've entered the no, just like, reach out for support from whoever you feel a resonance with. And I think, for the people in Perth, I know that, like, sitting with you is always really helpful for me when I'm going through difficult times in my life. It's like great when I'm happy, but through difficult times, it's really supportive. And I think we've lost a lot of that in our culture, like people actually sitting with a master or having guidance from someone who has a greater capacity to be with sensation and experience, a greater capacity to hold equanimity in their consciousness. And I think, now more than ever, that's really needed. And have some fun, like actually do some self-inquiry into, how can I open to what's here right now? And also what brings me joy? Because aloneness is so difficult, turns into loneliness, because we don't know what to do without stimulation a lot of the time, with the way that our culture is. So it's like, what would bring me joy? What brought me joy as a child? Maybe I want to start painting again. Maybe, you know, for me, I'm like reading like for 3 or 4 hours a day. It's great. And doing lots of writing and spending more time in nature. So what lights you up? And try, if you notice that a lot of things that bring you joy, it's external stimulation coming in, that's okay. Like if you like watching movies or having one glass of wine maybe is healthy at the moment. You want to keep your immune system really boosted, so alcohol is one of the worst things. But like, okay, what brings me joy from the inside out? You know, playing board games with your kids, sitting down with them. Children are definitely our best teacher as well at the moment, because, you know, they're always in the present moment and open to the joy that's alive right now. So just some extra tips there.
Just had a moment of just thinking of people that maybe are by themselves in a tiny little apartment, you know, and maybe they're not used to, like, so many people in New York right now, and LA, and of course Italy and Spain, like these places that are really, really in shutdown, lockdown. They're in their tiny little apartment by themselves. There's a lot of lonely people right now, and you touched on there's a difference between like being alone and
or being with your family.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Oh yeah, and the alone lonely. Yeah, for sure.
Right. So like, I mean, it is a deep, deep practice, which can even lead to going deep into like dark night of the soul, like really diving into that feeling of being alone. If you are literally alone for a few weeks, a few months, who knows? In some of these places, it's going to be a while of being.
Let's give people some really good, like, YouTube teachers to kind of YouTube, or things to YouTube.
Yeah, suggest your top 3.
Top 3
off the top of your head.
I love Wayne Dyer. Hey, I grew up with Wayne Dyer.
Yeah,
he's so clear. He's so beautiful. I really love him.
What about a tantra one? Like if people are just like
Shakti Milan.
Okay, Shakti
Milan. She's passed now. I met her in Prague, and she was one of those people, just in her presence, and I was just like, whoa, this is what love is. That's the Tantra teacher, I would say. And 3. That's a hard. I love Adyashanti. His satsang is like, really applicable to life. He's not, I'd say those 3 are really good. What about you?
And you've got quite a bit of online content.
Yeah, I've got lots of free resources. So podcasts, YouTube. Yeah.
I'll put
if you're liking the sounds of my vibe. Yeah. And you've got podcasts and YouTube. You've got great audios, actually. I love listening to your audios. Yeah,
there'll be heaps more coming out soon as well. I've been recording a lot. But my top 3, of course, Ram Dass. I mean, Ram Dass's teachings can be applied to anything, especially right now. There's so many to choose from, but that whole crew, that whole Ram Dass satsang. So Lama Surya Das, who's going to be on the podcast again soon, he's great and he's funny. He's like he's a wise Lama, yet just so funny and lighthearted. And Mirabai Starr, I think, is
you've told me about her. Yeah, okay, I'll have to look her up.
I think you would love her. She's a great voice for right now. Deep feminine wisdom.
Okay, I'm going to write her down so I don't forget.
Scholarly in terms of like studying a lot of the feminine mystics. You would love her. She's great.
Mirabai Starr. And I've got Carmageddon to watch that.
Yeah, Carmageddon, and read her latest book, Wild Mercy. Mirabai Starr's latest book. It's a great one. Yeah. All
right, sweet. I just finished my book. Good timing. Wild Mercy.
I mean, they're my top 3, but there's so many. I mean, this is a great time. I mean, if you're trying to figure out what to do with a whole day, like you can create your own like retreat schedule,
totally.
Get up, do a little asana practice, tune into Chantelle's teachings the next hour, like Adyashanti. What a great day it can be, huh?
Yeah, I've been really encouraging people that. And, the people who couldn't come to the Living Tantra retreat that was meant to happen, like, right when this all blew up, I'm like, still do the retreat.
Yeah.
Just from your home. Lots of opportunities. And movies, like if you're going to watch movies, I saw like so many people are watching that. What is it? The movie that's
one?
The coronavirus one, but it's not Pandemic.
Pandemic, okay.
Do not watch Pandemic. It's like, and as soon as you put on Netflix, it comes up. It's like,
we just
trending at the moment. Pandemic.
There's a series, not The Lion King, but it's following these collectors of exotic animals in the south of the US, and this kind of battle between animal activists and them, and it's really well done. I didn't think I would enjoy it, but Joe pulled it up, and it's funny, and it's quite a funny series. I'll
and the kids can watch. Oh, great! I'd love that.
Yeah,
the kids can watch it.
So far, so far. I mean, every now and then we let Soleil watch her own thing, and I think that's good advice for parents as well. I know it's tempting just to put the kids in front of a screen all day, but it'll fucking send them nuts. They turn into like the equivalent of a coke addict trying to get their fix. So
what goes in must come out.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Non-stop is going in. When I did the Steiner teacher training, he's like, no TV for the first 7 years, because when children are watching it in the first 7 years before they enter the feeling realm, they're actually picking up on, the zzz in old TVs when you used to flip.
Right.
Their sense receptors are taking that in more than the actual image. So it's like all of that stimulation's going in, and then it has to come out.
And that's TVs. Apparently, like what's coming out of iPads and laptops and iPhones, way worse. So apparently, So we've really got to be discerning with that. We let them watch a little bit. Soleil a little bit, but we're definitely discerning with that one for sure. Yeah,
it's a great time for parents to read and watch like stuff about conscious parenting too. All the Rudolf Steiner material is amazing. There's lots of good parenting stuff out there.
Anyway, this has been beautiful. So good to finally get you on the podcast. And
yeah,
thank you
it was
so much for your
good.
time.
Always great chatting with you, Stu.
And any links you want me to share with the listeners, send them our way. Is there anything else you want to mention for what they can tune into?
No, just be extra cautious of things that are uplifting. So what I was going to say with the movies is try not to go for the like horror movies and when fear's already like strong right now. So, you know, feel good sci-fis or romantic comedies or comedies. That's kind of what you want to go for, I reckon. Documentaries.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah.
Well, much love. Send my love to the Bali crew.
Yes, and my love to Joe and family. Bye, darling.
Right. Thanks, Raven.
Thanks, Stu.